You're tuned in to Inside Lowell. Inside Lowell podcast brought to you in part by Washington Savings Bank, serving the greater Lowell community for over 130 years. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. Unicare, offering a variety of plans for people insured under the GIC. At Unicare, your health is their top priority. Reverie 73, Lowell's #1 cannabis shop. Elevate your cannabis experience at Reverie 73. Hafner's, heating and cooling homes and businesses for nearly a century. Become a part of the Hafner's family. It kicks. Boston North Company, offering a wide variety of business solutions to help restaurant and retail clients save money. Boston North. And by Mahoney Oil Company, providing warmth and protection to families in Greater Lowell and Southern New Hampshire since 1925. That's Mahoney Oil. And now, time for another Inside Lowell podcast. Inside Lowell. If Lowell is your home, this is your place.
Welcome back, everybody, to another Inside Lowell podcast. I am your host, Teddy Panos, coming to you from the Inside Lowell studios here in downtown Lowell. Got a special show for you here. Supposed to be a debate between the District 4 candidates in vying for a Lowell City Council seat. District 4, of course, called the Downtown District, but really kind of as it was described in 2021, the Sausage District, because it has a whole bunch of different neighborhoods thrown in to make the district. But unfortunately, one of the candidates who we hope to have with us would not commit to appearing here. So instead, we're going to have a one-person debate. Maybe I'll try to push back a little bit against the candidate vying for that seat, who we bring in right now. He is the incumbent councilor in District 4, Wayne Jenness. Good morning, Wayne. We are filming this on Friday morning, October 20th, I believe is the date. Off the top of my head, I got it right. Good morning, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Good morning, Teddy. Thanks for having me in. I appreciate it. Always nice to be able to sit down and chat one of these.
Well, good. Let's see if you think the same thing after I'm done.
Sure.
So anyway, given that this was going to be a debate, I'm going to follow the same format, give you an opportunity to make both an opening and a closing statement. So without any further ado, your opening statement. Why do you deserve another term on the city council?
All right. Thank you very much, Teddy. So my name is Wayne Jenness. I am currently serving as the District 4 City Councilor. This is my first re-election campaign. Through the first term that I've served on the council, I spent a good chunk of time just figuring out how to be a counselor at the beginning of the term. You don't really get any kind of training. It's a bit of a crash course. You win the elections. Congratulations. Good luck. I've developed some really good relationships with my fellow counselors and learning from those who've been in those seats for a while, and really feel like I've been able to figure the job out, and I feel like I've done a pretty good job of focusing on some of the issues faced by the whole city, but specifically the downtown, from the infrastructure issues to housing issues to equity issues, all over the map. And I'm really enjoying the work. I find it very, very rewarding. I've developed great relationships with all the various neighborhood groups in the district. And so I just want to kind of keep it going. I want to keep doing this work and, see a lot of the stuff that we've set in motion these first 2 years, see it through and make sure we finish this stuff the right way.
All right. Thank you for that. You mentioned a few things we're going to talk about here. My first question, however, is you talked about this as your first term, first time under a new system. How do you think district representation has worked? Has it benefited the specific neighborhoods / districts that were created as the folks who pushed for this change envisioned?
I think it's had some big successes. I think having folks be in that room every day who come from neighborhoods where there weren't folks from those neighborhoods in that room for as long as I've been paying attention, whether that's downtown or the Acre or Centerville or all these neighborhoods that really lacked a presence in that room. I think that there's been a significant benefit just having people who see the issues day in and day out and being able to bring that to both to the discussions that happen on Tuesday night, but also just to get eyeballs on things by calling the city manager or whatever, if there's something going on in the neighborhood, I think that the response to neighborhood issues has been much quicker because of it, and that's great. I think that we still got a little ways to go. We can do a better job, but I think we've done a good job in the first time through with this system, and I look forward to seeing how we do next time around.
So I can make an argument that the downtown always got a lot of attention, and some would say an inordinate amount of attention, even under the old system. It seems that because of the homelessness and vagrancy issues, that was certainly the case this time as well. But I'm wondering about the rest of your district. Now, I know there were a bunch of proposals and initiatives for kind of the back central neighborhood and some of the issues they were having. But going across the river, because part of your district is not downtown, it's Pawtucketville or bordering on Lower Centerville and whatnot. Do you feel that those folks maybe are suffering a little bit in that you're kind of seen as the downtown district? It's even, I mean, everybody even calls it the downtown district. Do you get a sense that maybe they're still not getting enough?
I've tried really hard to remain engaged with everyone across the district, because it is District 4. It's not the downtown district, right? It is District 4. And yeah, it's kind of a quirk of the math when you divide 115,000 by 8 to get even numbered districts. You drew the districts and you did have some leftovers, and that's kind of what became District 4 in my mind. But I kind of see my role as kind of a mini at-large counselor a lot of times, because I do try to get to all 5 of the neighborhood groups that fall into District 4. And whether it's focusing on issues that my friends in East Pawtucketville have with all their college neighbors and everything else, or something a little bigger like the Beaver Street Bridge that's plugging along and looking forward to getting that behind us, because it's been a long road there. I try to keep focus everywhere, and it's tough, and it's it can be difficult to balance just the time commitment with 5 different neighborhood groups, but I do the best I can. And I think at the end of the day, it's great for people over there, even if they don't feel like they necessarily fit into the quote unquote downtown district. They still have that one voice to call, that one person to call. I think it's much easier now for people to figure out if they have something they want to bring to the city council, who to call. Before, you had 9 names on a list and you're like, well, who do I call? Now you have your district counselor. And even if it isn't someone who, happens to live on your street, there's still one name. And so I get a lot of calls from everywhere across the district because of that. And I think that's a benefit.
5 different neighborhood groups. I did not realize that. So I'm going to amend my next question a little bit to account for that. The question is, what's the most pressing need in your district today? But I'm going to give you a chance to kind of address what's the most pressing need for each of the various components of your district, if they're different at all, or is it the same need?
I think it's the same theme, and that theme is pretty much infrastructure, right? And District 4, I think, is a good microcosm of the city because it has so many neighborhoods that it represents. But one of the challenges is always the interconnectedness of our neighborhoods, getting from Pawtucketville to Centerville, or Centerville to downtown, or however you want to look at it. And that's why I've really tried to focus and push towards fixing our infrastructure, things like the Beaver Street Bridge, things like finishing off the Concord River Greenway and other connections to make things easier. Downtown can't survive by itself. The businesses downtown need more than just the folks who live downtown, right? It needs to be easy for people from the Acre to cross Dutton Street and come down and get a coffee or dinner or whatever. And it needs to be that way across the city. And so in that way, not being a purely downtown counselor, I think helps me have that perspective.
Okay. Let's jump to public safety. Do the residents in your district feel safe? And then that also from police and fire component.
Yeah. So, we'll start with fire because I think there's some clear points we can make, which was when this council started 2 years ago, we were dealing with the brownout issue, and that had a lot of folks nervous and caused issues in response to fires across the city. And I think that we as a council have done an excellent job responding to that and kind of addressing those issues. And we're now to a point where We don't have those brownouts anymore. On the police side of the equation, I would say that most people feel safe. However, there is a perception among some people in some places that the city is not as safe as it should be, and that has its challenges, and we're working on it. One of the biggest challenges there, I think, is the fact that the police department is down over 30 officers and has been for a while. Figuring out how to close that gap and how to fill those roles so that the shifts can be staffed fully, so that all the cars can be out is important. I also want to make sure that we resolve some of the lingering issues from the cyber attack in April. The police officers still can't write reports in their cars. This is something that's come up at a couple meetings recently. At a neighborhood meeting this week, I learned that the crime mapping software that the police use still isn't back online. So I have a motion in for this coming meeting, just trying to get an assessment from the administration as to what's still down and what are we still working on. Because I think 6 months in, we should have a pretty clear picture about what's left to fix. And get that done. And a lot of that does have to do with public safety, and making sure those systems are available and working as they're supposed to is a big part of making sure the city feels safe.
So it may have got lost in the shuffle of the ADU debate that just concluded for now in the city. But I do recall the motions about the computers not working. I spoke to an officer last night who said that puts an incredible drain on their time and their ability to do the rest of their jobs. Why 6 months out, or is it still an issue? Have you received any indication yet on that, and also the crime mapping? Yeah,
sure. So putting my IT guy hat on, just because that's what I do for my day job, I understand the complexities of managing a system like this and how everything fits together. And honestly, the city was in a situation where there was probably a lack of investment for a long period of time that contributed to this issue. And so now we're in a situation where we're trying to catch up. There were things that needed to be fixed, systems that needed to be changed, updated, new security procedures implemented, and things like that. And that stuff takes time. And honestly, it takes a big financial commitment as well, which is why this year's budget included, or the capital plan, included about, I want to say it was either $1.5 million or $2 million in IT spend to be able to catch us up. But implementing that stuff just takes time. These projects don't happen overnight. And I know the team at City Hall is working on it. And I look forward to hearing where we're at in this process.
Given your background, I'm glad you brought it up, because I wanted to ask you specifically, how did the city handle that now that we look at it 6 months, maybe 7 months later? In the beginning, there was a lot of criticism. There was a lot of fear. A hacking group was putting out things, and everybody thought their information was compromised.
Yeah.
And the city got a lot of criticism.
Yep.
It's funny, since that time, there hasn't, but I don't think we've seen a major wave of city employees or people who do business with the city have their information compromised. Yeah. We've also seen that it does happen everywhere. I've received 6 letters from banking companies, credit card companies, and also health providers saying their systems got hacked and my data may have been compromised. So now that you look back at it, given the minimal damage, at least to the information and the employees, knock on wood for now, did the city, do you feel comfortable that the city's MIS department handled this properly?
Sure. That's a good question. Thank you for that. So the first thing I'll say is, like you said, it does happen everywhere. I got a letter in my email just the other day about, another data compromise at somebody who has something to do with my health insurance provider. It's happening everywhere, and it's happening more and more frequent. And cities are a target because we have a lot of data in the city. We also have, I would say, long procurement times, and the public infrastructure takes a little while to catch up to private sector. You can't really make the changes you need to as quick. And I think that hampers the city a little bit. In terms of the response, initially I was a little disappointed with just the communication. And a big part of that is honestly just the city didn't know what was taken. They had no way of really knowing what was exfiltrated, how it was exfiltrated, and it was an active investigation. It's still an active investigation, and so with those two things combined, it really kind of tied the city's hands on what they could say. I did push a couple times for more information to be released. Like we said, we get those letters in our email that says, your information may have been accessed and here's what you might need to worry about. And I push for that information to go out because obviously city employees are going to have one set of data. Residents will have another set of data. Businesses will have another set of data. So I think it's important to let people know what data the city has so that when something pops up, you can know, okay, is this because of the city or is this because my health insurance got compromised? For instance, like the city doesn't have resident social security numbers, right? We don't. So if there's something happening with the social security number for a non-employee who happens to be a resident in the city of Lowell, that almost certainly didn't come from the city. And so I think it would have helped to be able to provide that information to everyone up front and just say, hey, these are the categories of information we have. Here's what you got to watch out for. The city's done a good job in responding to the situation, providing things like LifeLock to employees and retirees and things like that. And that's a good step in the right direction. Overall, we got there. It might have taken a little longer than some would have expected, but this is the nature of the beast.
All right, you mentioned LifeLock. It's almost like you're reading my mind on where I'm going with the questions. So in response to this, to kind of calm folks' fears, the city did offer LifeLock to certain groups, right? Certain retirees and employees.
Yep.
But that was temporary, I believe, it's for the next year or two, if I'm not mistaken. Is that a service that should be budgeted for all city employees and retirees going forward? Should that become a permanent part of the budget, given the fact that we're seeing municipalities are as big of a target now as credit card companies and other big businesses?
I think it's something we can discuss and keep in mind, but I don't know that it rises to the level of being required at this point, simply because I think the investments that we're currently making in our IT infrastructure are going to make us much more secure. And so hopefully, knock on wood, these breaches will not be as much of a concern going forward. And I would honestly rather see that money invested into protecting the information than being spent on something like LifeLock.
Okay. We are chatting with Lowell City Councilor Wayne Jenness. We were hoping to have a debate between Councilor Jenness and his opponent in District 4, Amada Gregory. We did communicate on multiple occasions with Ms. Gregory. Unfortunately, she ultimately decided not to appear for this forum. So we're going to continue our discussion here with Councilor Jenness. It's been a month and a half. We're recording this on October 20th. It's been a month and a half since Governor Healy acknowledged that she's in negotiations with UMass Lowell about using the Inn and Conference Center as a migrant shelter. We reported here on Inside Lowell October 9th that she was negotiating 2.5 months later. And we still don't know. Do you know?
I do not. I wish I did. It's a question that I've been asking repeatedly since this story first started breaking. Thank you for that, by the way.
Sorry, thank you for all the plugs from everybody at the city council.
Right. As soon as I saw that, I immediately started reaching out to the university, to the governor's chief of staff, to folks in the lieutenant governor's office, and have had hours of conversations. That's basically me saying, what's the plan? What can you tell me? And as much as I've figured out, as of the last time I've had these conversations, there is no concrete plan. The best I can tell is that the governor's administration is still in a kind of an investigatory, exploratory type of situation with the university, trying to figure out what could they use the building for, what would it look like, et cetera, et cetera. And so as far as I can tell, there is no concrete plan at this time. I did see that Governor Healy recently said that the shelter system in the Commonwealth is approaching a breaking point, and they're not going to be able to continue to house people. I don't know if that breaking point that she's looking at includes the beds in the ICC or not. And that's a question I'd like to know. Are they counting on those beds at this point, or are they not?
Okay. two follow-ups to that. First, given the existing homeless and vagrancy issues in the city, especially in the downtown, and given that we're told we're in a major housing crisis across the state, is it wise for the city of Lowell to take on even more? Should the city kind of be more forceful in saying we can't do anymore and push back a little bit?
I don't think the answer is we can't do any more. I think we need to say, if we're going to do more, we need to be given commensurate resources to do more from the state and the federal government. Because you're right, we are strapped, and it's not like there's a pile of extra money sitting around that we don't have, extra teachers in the school system ready to teach more kids. We just don't have more right now. And so if the state's going to come in and say, okay, here's a bunch of folks that need housing, great, awesome. I don't think that leaving the ICC empty for the next 8 months makes any sense for anybody, right? If we can use that to help people, that's great. But the city is not going to be able to do it on its own. And the state also needs to take into consideration what using that building does for the rest of the city here. And we need to plan around that.
You mentioned something that is interesting, because in preparation, so they didn't have to take drastic last minute action, the university shut that place down.
Exactly. Yep.
No more rooms and no more functions as of September 30th. City has already lost 20 days worth of limited room occupancy tax, but meals taxes from functions that cannot be held there. If ultimately the decision is made to house them there for whatever that period is, 12 months, 20, are you confident, given what you're hearing from New York and Chicago and everywhere else around the country, that the federal and state governments are even going to provide the city of Lowell additional resources?
That's a significant concern, to be sure. You don't have to look that far away. All you have to do is look at Methuen. They've had their struggles, and they've been beating the drum as well for more resources. And I don't see why we should honestly expect any different. But I think it's on us as a council, it's on the city administration, it's on our state delegation to really continue to push and really ask and have these conversations with the governor and her staff, because otherwise we're not going to get anything if we don't ask. If we're not banging that door down, it ain't going to happen. So it's on us to keep beating that drum.
Right. Shifting gears, what was the signature motion of your first term? Which one are you most proud of?
It's a tough one. As we've all seen the charts, there've been a lot of motions that have flown around this term. So to single one out is tough. But I will say one thing that really popped into my mind is the motion about the HRC's Municipal Equality Index. This was something that came out, and out of 10 cities in Massachusetts that were analyzed, Lowell had the lowest score of the 10. And in part, it seemed to be because the survey seemed to have gotten, quote unquote, lost in the mail, we'll say, during the shift in administration from the old city manager to the current city manager. And I think that got missed. But in bringing that up and having those conversations, the administration was really excited to be able to take that on and really strive to do better this time around. For those that don't know, the HRC Municipal Equality Index is an annual survey they do that looks at policies, procedures, and the environment in a given municipality as it pertains to LGBTQ inclusion and equality in the city. And Lowell has a pretty significant gay, lesbian population. And I received a lot of phone calls when that first survey came out, and Lowell's score was 50 out of 100. And everywhere else in Massachusetts was much, much higher. So I was able to hear those conversations, digest the study, make the motion, and really get the wheels rolling so that the next time that survey gets done, Lowell not only looks better, but does better. And, you know, there were some improvements to policies and procedures that came out of that. And I'm very happy to be able to look at that and say that, you know, I made a difference there.
Okay. Let's shift gears to economic development. The Hamilton Canal Innovation District, whatever we're calling it or gonna call it next. It was supposed to be the next great downtown. That happens to me all the time. So, but we were, it was billed as that's where all the economic activity is going to come. And it's going to be a mixed residential, but also commercial district. Here we are, all these years later, and I remember, awarding it to Trinity back in 2009. And so we got the first building, which is now the UMass Lowell Innovation Hub. Since that time, we've got a courthouse, 2 parking garages, and housing, and some of it subsidized housing. Should we just give up hope on that ever becoming an economic development engine and just make it another residential neighborhood?
No, I don't think we should give up hope. I do think that there have been significant challenges as you just outlined, but we have made progress. And, I think that getting the infrastructure in there was a long road, but that's done. There are now streets that run through there. There is power and utilities under those streets that make those parcels more developable and more accessible to work that's going to happen. I am frustrated with the current state of it, particularly the parcels that were sold to the private developer who's now mostly built a garage, and that is it. That garage construction was the same exact construction method as the city garage, which went together much, much quicker. The land disposition agreement for selling those parcels included a date from back in July by which construction was supposed to begin on the other parcels. And as we can see, that hasn't happened. I did file a motion recently asking the city manager to come back to us and tell us what's going on there and what are our options, because it's not a good situation to have this land just sitting there not being used. I do know that there are discussions about some of the other stuff that I can't talk about right now, but I have my fingers crossed and I'm thinking good thoughts. I'll say that. But I do think it's a good time to take a step back and look at the area and decide, were the original goals, or are the original goals still right? Should we still be shooting for the same things we were? I personally think that mixed use on a lot of the parcels is probably the way to go. It will extend that downtown feel. It'll keep some commercial business in that section of the city and provide more opportunity, at the same time providing for some housing opportunity. With that motion I filed, I did also ask the city manager to ask DPD to look into the potential of issuing an RFP for someone to possibly build a small, medium-sized hotel in that space with some conference space, because of the ICC discussion and the potential of losing that. As an IT person, I'm very sensitive to systems with a single point of failure, and having one hotel is a big single point of failure that we need to eliminate. And I know you've been working to try to do that as well. So, but if we can get something going on that side of downtown, it's not going to be an overnight thing, obviously, but I think there's a potential there.
It's one of the challenges, and I'll tell you, because it's the question I get. So who's going to fill those rooms? If you don't, and the university is a big part of that. Everybody loves the university's presence. There's a tourism and show component, but ultimately for Monday through Friday, the people who fill hotel rooms are business travelers.
Right.
And if you don't have any kind of office space or something down there, it makes it difficult for hotels. And that's why I'd hate to see the city completely give up on at least some type of jobs component in there. It may not be, the days of the office tower may be dead post-COVID, but there needs to be some kind of jobs component down.
Right. But there needs to be a jobs component for sure. And as much as I'd love to see it in the Hamilton Canal District, I think we can also look a little further afield at the East Campus development. I think there's a lot of potential with what the university is looking to do over there to bring those jobs in as well. And if someone's staying at a hotel in the Hamilton Canal District, that's 3 blocks away from there. So, there's an opportunity there as well. I don't think, like you said, the days of the office tower, I can't see that working. All you got to do is look at downtown Boston and the amount of empty office space, and they're trying to figure out what to do with it. It's, no one's going to build an office tower at this point.
All right, let's shift to the city manager. Came in shortly after the new council got sworn in. How would you rate the job he's done in his year and a half?
Sure. So I think Tom had some big challenges at the beginning. The smallest of which was certainly not the staffing. There was a lot of turnover, a lot of senior folks left, and to a large extent, you're going to get that whenever you change any kind of executive in any organization. But there was more than I was really expecting, and I think there might have been more than he was expecting too. And so I think it took him a while to be able to fill those roles and understand how those folks really can complement his job and make his job easier. And once those roles started filling up, I think that Tom and the team he's put together have done a good job in the city. I feel like they are very responsive to the needs of the community and the needs of the council, and they're always looking to do more. I think that there are opportunities for improvement everywhere, but on the whole, I think they've done a good job, and I'm happy that we have the team we have in place right now.
Would you give a numerical grade from 1 to 10? Only because the last debate I had, both candidates did.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't listened to that debate, so I wasn't prepared for that. I'd probably say 7.5, 8, somewhere in there.
All right, you're a more reasonable grader. He got 10s until I pushed back a little, and then one of them dropped it to 9.5. So, because there's always room for improvement, and I happen to agree with that. Finally, a lot of residents not happy with the 9% tax increase over the last 2 years. And look, we understand that the city hadn't spent up to its levy capacity, so there was room to do it, and there's still room to do it. Putting aside the argument of whether the taxes should go up again that much, has the money been spent wisely?
I think we've done a good job building a decent budget. Once again, I think this is an area where there is room for improvement. Last year was, Tom's first budget, but he came in and the budget was already mostly built at that point, right? So we had a whole lot of transfers right at the start of the year. That was an indication to me that this isn't right. So far this year, knock on wood, we haven't seen that. So I think that speaks to the budget being in a better spot, and the money being spent effectively. As to the tax rate, yes, we've seen a significant increase, and every single one of us who sits in that meeting on Tuesday night has heard from the residents about it. But there was a long time where the city didn't raise taxes, as you mentioned, and I think that created a bit of a structural deficit in the budget. The costs of everything were still going up, but we weren't compensating on the revenue side to be able to pay for it. And if you look at situations like just our street maintenance, we were so far behind the curve because of deferred maintenance issues. Streets, fire departments, fire buildings, police buildings, schools, the whole 9 yards. It's all a symptom of that deferred maintenance problem that we've been chipping away at. And I think we're making progress, but it's not something we're going to solve overnight. But I think that the tax increases have corresponded with an increase in services and an increase in quality of life around the city. And so I think that by and large, people appreciate that. And when they can see concrete results from their taxes going up, it makes it a lot easier to stomach those increases.
So the residents, that's what I really wanted to get into. The residents in your district saying that they're seeing these differences. I hear from other folks, I still see potholes, I still see lines not painted, roads, sidewalks not maintained. Are the residents in your district seeing results? So
there is still some of that, to be sure. I got an email just this week from somebody who lives over in Lower Centerville with a list of similar concerns, one of which was lines not being painted. Last night, the city was out painting those lines. It's, it was a challenging summer for things like line painting, thanks to it raining every 2-3 days. It's raining today, it'll rain tomorrow. So that's been a challenge, and that makes it harder to meet those things and harder for people to see things. But when you have the time to actually sit with someone and explain, okay, I understand your frustrations with potholes, for instance. Here's what we've done to address it. People get it. And people do see it. I think it's one of those things where whenever you see a problem in front of your face, you're always going to be like, it's this thing again. But then when you actually have a chance to take a step back and look at the bigger picture, I think it is evident. And I've had a lot of good conversations around that with folks.
All right. I've run out of questions, thankfully. So here's your chance to make your closing argument to the voters.
All right, great. Well, first, thanks again for having me in. You didn't scare me off. I did enjoy it, so thank you. But for the folks in District 4, I've tried to be as responsive as I can and tried to be as proactive as I can over these past 2 years, and I have no desire to change that. I really enjoy this work. I enjoy being the person you call when there's a pothole or there's a trash barrel that's overflowing and needs to be addressed. I also enjoy the larger, bigger picture things that we have to deal with as a council every week. And all these things have really been extremely fulfilling for me these past 2 years. And I would love the opportunity to continue to do it. So I would ask that you please consider voting for me on November 7th if you happen to live in District 4. Thank you very much.
When Jenness, District 4 Lowell City Council, seeking re-election, your opponent, Amada Gregory, will be on the ballots, which I found out were just printed. So we'll be posting those as well. Thank you for stopping in.
All right. Thanks so much for having me. Have a great day.
All righty. That was Wayne Jenness. Again, we offered Amada Gregory opportunity to join us. Unfortunately, agree on a time or date or she would do it or not. But you can find out her stance in other places on where she is on the issues as well. Compare and contrast them to what you just heard from Council Ness. Got a bunch more debates coming up that we'll be posting on all our social media, website, YouTube channels, all of the rest. Until next time, everybody, stay safe.